Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special YouTube-only live streaming here by Auden Hospitality. And today I'm joined by two heavyweights who I'm really proud to call friends as well. So I'm here with Kenneth, Scharlatt, and Jean-Paul Lafitte. Guys, welcome to this stream. Really excited to talk about Food and Beverage 2025 today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Let's get cracking. So Kenny, why don't you start? Take 60 seconds. Just tell everyone about you, a little bit of your background about why you are the best person to be talking about 2025 food and beverage, and a little bit about your brand new consultancy that you've just set up.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. And 2025 is going to be a heck of a year, I think, for hotel food and beverage, especially over here in the States. We have some great things getting ready to start happening over here. Set up a consultant company, similar to what Auden does overseas, but we're doing it a little bit of a smaller scale. But we're building it up pretty good. We're doing things in regards to marketing and rebranding concepts and things of that nature. Not so much interior design or anything like that yet. We're still working towards that, but got to start on the ground floor and work your way up. So it's going to be a great year for us.
100%. JP, over to you. Same thing, 60 seconds. Tell everyone about you and your brand new consultancy as well, and also the bar project, which is really exciting.
Yeah, so working in this industry for 25 years now, both hotel side, but also the privately owned bars and restaurants, which makes it quite interesting to mix and match both experiences. Worked in like small bars in 5-star properties all over the world, Caribbean, Latin America, Middle East. I did some private projects in China even, so I've been around. For now, I started my own consultancy company called 5-Star Hospitality, in which I'm supporting hotels, but also the small bar or restaurant owner, the local ones, in their mission to give the best service wherever. And on the side note, I'm opening my own bar, so I'm working now daily with mostly now fire life safety to get all the paperwork in, and then we can finally start. But I'm opening a bar in the city center of The Hague, a city where I live in Holland.
Sounds really fun, and that's the most exciting bit, isn't it? Looking at the fire safety and the exit plans and all the rest of it. It's the bit of the build that everyone forgets about.
Exactly. It's what kind of kills your vibe on a daily basis, but you have to go through it. No answer can be done in a week. They all need 2-3 weeks to. Oh, I'll get back to you. Oh, we'll meet next week. We'll meet in 10 days. So my patient's being tested, and it's going pretty well. So can't complain.
100%. And we had a conversation, didn't we, about building in public. So once we get past all the fire life safety plans and things, we can't wait to see some of that taking fold as well. So guys, let's kick off. We've got a few questions come in from LinkedIn over the last 24 hours as well, and I've got some questions for you guys as well. So Kenny, let's start with you in terms of like the current challenges you're seeing in the market with people you've been working with, and just kind of generally the state of where hotel food and beverage is over there in the States. Do you want to just tell people and set the scene? And it's not to be a doom and gloom this. We want to give lots of answers for the people watching, but let's set the scene.
I think the biggest thing that is starting to happen over here in the US is it's a period of uncertainty. With the new, and I'm not trying to make this a political conversation or anything like that, but with the new administration that has come into office recently, where are things going to stand? Price of agriculture things, tomatoes, crops, farms, things of that nature. Nobody knows. It's all up in the air right now. So it's kind of in a wait and see period in regards to cost controls and things of that nature. But at the same time, on the flip side, I think it's a period where there's a lot of excitement at the same time, because hoteliers are starting to realize that they need to start bringing in some outside of the box kind of ideas and start thinking more along the lines of an independent restaurateur as opposed to the traditional way that a hotelier has done things for the past 30 plus 40 plus years. We know that we need to be able to start bringing in people from the local community. We know that we need to start not relying solely on hotel guests to make food and beverage revenues. So, for the longest time, food and beverage has always been thought of as a financial loss leader. And now people are starting to, ownerships and management groups are starting to realize that there's a potential there that we can start utilizing, our spaces um, as more of a community hub where we bring in both local community as well as hotel guests. So it's kind of an exciting time. Um, we'll see where it goes. I mean, it's just starting to kick off. So I think 2025 is going to be a year where it'll give us a better understanding as we come to the close of this year where exactly we stand.
100%. I think that's bang on, and I think JP for us over here in Europe, I think we've been dealing with some of those cost issues from a food perspective, probably for about 2 or 3 years now, right? And especially us in the UK with Brexit thrown on top of everything else happening in the climate, I think we're taking a payback a little bit more than maybe some others. But what are some of the things you're seeing in Europe as well, and then I can share some bits on the UK.
Well, for me here, labor costs and to get the qualified people in. Like people, we cannot find chefs, we cannot find waiters, we cannot find bartenders. We have to explain new people how to make a mojito. Well, a few years ago, you could find easily. So I see a big shift of people coming from South Europe to Holland, in this case, to look for jobs, and I think that's the biggest challenge now is that we have great ideas, we have great entrepreneurs and hotels with great restaurants or bars, but they cannot find the people to manage it. So not even a day-to-day operation. Let's stand doing a little bit extra. So here the labor and also labor cost, because this is like on your payroll, it's extremely high. It's the biggest challenge now for 2025 to get it under control and to see who will survive.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a really interesting one. We're obviously seeing it here, and I know in the States, certain states over there, especially California, have been hit pretty hard by minimum wage increases. We're about to see one here in the UK in April as well. Minimum wage going up, the employers' taxes are going up as well. Food cost is, again, it's kind of becoming a little volatile. Fish has massively gone up over the last couple of weeks because there's been bans on stuff coming from Russia and things like that. So those cost challenges are definitely not going away. I thought they'd got to a point where they'd kind of stabilized, particularly in Europe, where we could maybe manage it better and at least we knew what it was going to be. But it just seems to be kind of hitting that volatility again. And I guess what that means is operators and hoteliers are going to have to start really focusing on that top line while keeping things tight on the cost. But that top line's probably never become more important, JP, than it is right now, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's the whole thing. Like the bottom line, we always is to say a prayer and we hope for the best most of the time. But getting it in, that's the big challenge now. Even now in Holland, they're discussing to raise the VAT, the VAT. Wow, and it's another few percent that will directly hit the consumer, not even us. It will go directly to the consumer. So that will be really challenging to get the top line revenue stream in and making sure that everybody survives.
Yeah, 100%. So Kenny, if we go into some of the questions that we were asked on LinkedIn, one of those questions was how do we drive guests to hotel dining? And I've used a stat now probably since we were in Texas together, to be honest, which was from the American Hotel Lodging Association, that 65% of people making hotel bookings are now booking because of food and beverage,
based on
right?
food and beverage.
That doesn't necessarily mean the food and beverage in the hotel. It means what they're doing is they're finding the places they want to go eat and drink in the place they're visiting, and they book hotels based on that location, which to me presents a huge opportunity that not only do we have the local community, but we have 65% of people checking in your hotel that are looking for great F&B. That to me is massive. So when we got the question last night about how to drive hotel dining, it really threw up one for me that is the most obvious place to start. What are some of the things that you would be telling operators, hoteliers? What are some of the things that you're putting into the operations you're working with to try and help do this? You talked about the local community, obviously, which is probably a great place to start.
Absolutely. So I think the big thing that I try to focus on when it comes to the marketing side of it is also to not rely solely on the hotel's website or hotel's social media streams, but to also utilize independent restaurant, like independent hotel, or I'm sorry, independent websites for the restaurant within the hotel, and also independent social media sites. Um, that's a big thing that I think will definitely help when it comes to people finding, you know, just finding out about you. That's step one. Once you have them in the door, I think the next thing that you can do is start utilizing a captive Wi-Fi service. So you can
Mm.
start generating a marketing list of people that have already been there, but now you can try to start getting them to come back more often. Um, so I think those are the two big things, but I think step one has to be utilizing um, independent, like its own website, its own social
Yeah.
media to start getting that out there, and then start doing some things that'll hopefully catch fire and make an
Yeah.
impression on people on social media. I think that has to be step one. It can't be just buried within the hotel stuff.
100%. I was doing a workshop for 12 leaders from a hotel group, a global hotel group, the other week, and I was talking about this storytelling a lot in terms of if you're looking at some of the independent restaurateurs now, two restaurants, Fallow here in London, Adam Byatt, the chef who has Trinity in Clapham here in London, are now getting more covers through YouTube because of their YouTube strategy, which is all built around storytelling of the products and the recipes, the people, the personality behind the brands, than they are from people like Open Table and third party networks. And it just really shows the opportunity to drive that and kind of really look at that independently from others. JP, you've obviously run the W in Amsterdam that had a huge influx of local community. It was built on bringing people from outside. What was the secrets that you looked at there to really kind of get that ingrained in the local community and the night spots?
Well, the local community and really likes the F&B outlets. So there are a few F&B outlets there which are third party, which do amazing. Michelin star, amazing nightclub, amazing restaurant that hasn't changed their menu for over 7 years. Same menu, fully booked 7 days a week. So I think because it's independent, they have more flexibility in how to communicate, how to reach the guests, and they will come. They can continue to come. And I see now more and more hotels all over the world are getting third-party F&B partners in just to get the place packed. So they'll charge a rent and they'll get you do whatever you want. And it's been successful. Whatever I see, I haven't seen one failing in terms of course, I don't know the numbers, but I see on social media, I talk with people who work there, they're fully booked. So I think it's that mindset of an entrepreneur versus being a hotelier will be the biggest influence you can have. Yeah.
I think what's really interesting about that actually is that, and I told a story a lot about how the first 15 years I was in hotels, F&B, ran great F&B. We were doing big revenues, but when I moved into independent restaurants, I learned that running restaurants is very different in the independent world than it is in hotels. And you use the word mindset there completely. This like entrepreneurial hustle business is key. And I was doing a podcast recording with Jason Brooks. Kenny knows him yesterday. That's going to be coming out on Hospitality Huddles. And he was saying, like, what other industry do you get where you get people who aren't trained running multi-million-dollar businesses on a day-to-day basis? And that's independent restaurants. And those guys have to hustle, they have to fight, they have to strive to survive, right? And I think there's the lessons that I want to kind of go into, because I think we've touched on a great point here that's going to really help people. But before we do, Michael Madison, he has a great product working with hotels and restaurants where you can update your menus from one source and it puts it onto the website. So check out Michael's profile there. But he talks about kind of his customers are telling them that quality of menus in terms of visibility and ease of navigation on hotel websites drive business. One of my pet hates is the retail space that food and beverage gets on a hotel website. And I know a lot of it here is because brands have set formats for what websites should look like, and you have to try and integrate it. But Kenny, that's where, when you're saying to set up independent websites, this is where you're now starting to take control of your outlets that doesn't interfere with the hotel. Because I always say hotel restaurants should be from the same family, but they shouldn't be twins. They have their own identity. They have their own tone of voice. They have their own brand. This is key, right?
100%. And I think the biggest thing, when I talk to people about this whole concept, I always tell them I wanted to think of as not so much as a hotel restaurant, but more of a restaurant that just so happens to be within a hotel. That it has its own independent feel, that it has some of its own branding. Now, you can use some of that branding to tie into the hotel if you want to, and still have a little bit of a connection, 100%, especially if it's more of a boutique hotel or things of that nature. But I think the biggest thing is you want it to have its own unique identity, where it doesn't feel so much as part of the hotel as it feels independent. And I think when you start doing the things, like I said earlier, with the websites and the social media and the marketing concepts and things of that nature, that it starts to almost begin its own life form, I guess is the best way to say it. And it becomes its own unique and living, breathing thing. I think that is a huge goal that should be in every hotel, restaurant, food and beverage person's mindset, moving forward.
I think it's a great point. And I'm going to go back to Michael again. He's brought up some brilliant points in terms of we need to treat those outlets as outsourced outlets. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have different P&Ls, you start charging rents and things like that. What I encourage to people we're working with is to really look at those independents and those third parties. How do they set up the way that they run that business, and how does that then work with the hotel side of the business? In that, if you go on the hotel website and there's a third party, no one tells you it's a third party. It sits there as one of your restaurants. But those third party restaurants don't also rely on that website to give them all the traffic. I mean, 9 out of 10 hotel websites don't have a book now button for prime example, right? So I think it's how do you set up your own identity? How do you give it a timeline? We're working with a hotel group, with a independent hotel right now. They have golf, they have spa, they have 4 different outlets, they have paddleboard, pickleboard. Like, they have a lot going on in this estate. There's no way a marketing person is going to be able to give that restaurant the retail space it deserves. So you have to take that into your own hands and create something for itself so that you can talk direct to the customer and get the guest and the customer engaged in your brand, JP, right? And back to what you were doing there at the W, I think these are one of the things that really starts to get that local community in and stop seeing it as a hotel restaurant.
Yeah, for sure. I think you need to reach out to them one way or another. So I work with a promoter. We brought in different parties, events, art galleries, fashion. We involved. We did a lot of things with local promoters just to get in. It's kind of a loophole because a lot of brands are are quite strict on what they want, even though they say they're open, they're not, because you have like a whole Bible you have to read before you can do one event or organize an event. So yeah, work with local community is the way. It's and that's what you need to get those numbers up in your outlets.
For sure. I think it's one of those, isn't it, where if 65% of people are wanting to go to great F&B around, if you can create that in your hotel and you can get locals in there to be hanging out, that's where your guests want to be. So if that's in your hotel, there's no need for them to go out, or maybe they might stay for cocktails or come back for drinks early. And I talk to hotels a lot about going, don't always think that capturing in-house guests is about dinner all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2 or 3 cocktails at the start of the evening, the nightcap at the end of the evening is what you need to just keep growing that revenue. Because right now, if your bar isn't strong enough, they're going to go outside, Kenny, right? And that's it's always looking at those marginal gains.
100%. And before I got into full-time consulting, my last permanent director of food and beverage position in Nashville, we did a full rebrand, remodel of a rooftop restaurant and lounge that was on top of a Marriott branded hotel. It was typically a select service brand, but we had full food and beverage, so it was considered more of a full service. When this hotel opened originally, 11 years ago, actually now, it was the first rooftop bar and lounge and restaurant in Nashville. And over time, it became mismanaged, so forth and so on. The pandemic happened, so that didn't help anything. But when they brought me in, we decided to do a full rebrand, full remodel, just to try to bring some of that energy back to it. It used to have a waiting list and a line outside the elevator door to get upstairs. So we did everything. We changed all the menus. We changed, the whole concept, because it wasn't a luxury brand by any stretch of the imagination. It was more of a transient, non-business related kind of brand. Didn't have a ton of business travelers, but one thing that it did have was its location, and the location was in one of the trendiest and up and coming parts of the city, where you can throw a stone and hit probably 10 to 12 condo buildings, in any which direction that you turned. So we did a full market analysis and tried to get local clientele in there, and we did show your Nashville driver's license and get a locals discount, or we did a whole bunch of locals promos, just to try to get people to come in from the local side. We were only a 160 room hotel, so it was a small hotel, and trying to get people from the hotel upstairs and things of that nature. Your hotel's never going to be fully sold out unless something's going on in the city or something like that. So we had to try to do something to get revenue in, and we really focused hard on bringing in local clientele.
Yeah, that's it's a really good one. I want to touch on this question from Andy Jones here. I know, JP, you've got experience of this. I've got experience of this from both sides of the fence as well, actually. But experience of letting space within the hotel to be operated by a third party. He follows that up with, does it work? JP, over to you on this one.
For me, I think it's a no-brainer. I think a lot of hotels should do so who are suffering in the F&B department. Go out, look for a good concept, and just go have a talk. I've seen it in various hotels, and also in the Caribbean where I used to work. Now a local chef who was born there got his fame in Holland. He opened his own chain of restaurants, and he sold it back to the hotel, and it's a huge beach club now. It's the #1 place to be. So it's the whole vibe they bring, the whole baggage they have already on experience, on how to get the guests in. They have a bit more fame because, like, most of the hotels will think of a name for their outlet without anything concerning fashion or trendy. They just think, oh, on Fifth Avenue, we call it the Fifth Restaurant, and that's it. No, there's no storytelling, there's no creativity whatsoever. Get a brand in, and the hotel wins because they will get a rental fee without any headaches and any concerns, and you will get a profitable outlet for an entrepreneur, and you automatically get more people in. So for me, I think it's something all hotels should consider who are struggling in the F&B department.
I agree with you. I think it's something that even though we get employed sometimes to develop concepts, or most of the time, when we're creating a strategy, it's always something we think about. Always. Because sometimes it is just the right thing to do. Maybe you're in that part of town that needs a pull. Maybe you're in that part of town that is just craving it. I think one of the things that I would say from being on both sides of the fence on this one is you've got to make sure the partnership works. Like you and the operator need to be best friends. You might fall out every now and again. You know, there might be certain things. If that partnership doesn't work, it just leads to conflict, and it's a slow road to disaster. I think when the two work well together, when the two marry together, when the two have the same vision and the same values, and it's aligned, that's then when you get some real opportunity from it. And I think you know, especially if you have them on a revenue-based deal as well, you know, the more you can help them be successful, the more you can drive revenue or profit straight to your bottom line. So I think definitely look at it, definitely take the opportunity, but forget the brand initially. Make sure the brand fits for your hotel. Spend lots of time with the founders. And then after that, spend lots of time with the person who they think will be running that venue, because that's the person you're going to talk to the most. And they're the ones that you need to trust, like your brother and family. So that would be my tip on that one. JP, you mentioned storytelling when you were talking about why people should be looking outsourced. And storytelling is a really big issue, I think, in terms of certain concepts that aren't working in hotels. And you know, I when we go into a new project, Bal's on the call, who's our ops director as well. We always walk in and we go and ask random people to explain the concept in one sentence. And 9 times out of 10, we'll get completely different answers from the range of people that we ask. When that happens, we kind of know where we need to start. We need to start with clarity. But if I was to ask you the question, and Kenny, I'll come to you next on the same question, how important is storytelling to food and beverage?
Yeah, it's everything. It's everything. I don't believe you can just randomly build 4 walls, throw in some chairs and tables, and expect people to come. The people are nowadays more intrigued by F&B. They all watch the chef programs. They all watch the bar rescue programs, and they love the story behind why did you open this bar? Why did you start this? Why are you intrigued by this? For me, for example, I would love to go to New Orleans, where a famous pirate called Jean Lafitte still had a blacksmith shop, and now it's still a bar. So there's a whole story behind it. And if you go to that place, I think it's the oldest bar in the United States. It's from the 1800s, but there's a whole history behind it. And it doesn't matter how it looks; it's just the energy it has. Whatever you're doing there, you can feel it. And even with a new property, you can do the same, but you need to have some kind of inspiration and story behind the bar, and don't think you can get away with, oh no, we like the concept. The concept without a story is just, for me, air.
Yep, I agree with that. And I think the other thing as well is don't fall into the mistake of trying to force a story. Like I see some people, you know, we're working on one right now, which is an old post office building. Beautiful old building that was built in the 1930s, steeped in history, still has loads of features. And we're doubling down on the post office. We're doubling down on it, and we're really driving that as the heart of the story for all the different venues that we're creating. But other hotels don't have that story. Sometimes just the story around the concept and the food and the cuisine, taking people to that place, sometimes is as powerful as trying to find something in the building or the local community. Back to your point of Fifth Avenue restaurant, it's about finding the right story, and it's about engaging people and taking people on the vision. Sometimes making people believe in the story is as powerful as the one that's there staring in the face as well, Kenny, right? And I think that's one of the things that is not to just get too hung up on, we have to find a story, because sometimes it can be really simple.
100%. And it goes back to what you were just saying about not forcing it, right?
Mm.
I, People want experiential dining. They want, especially in this time, time period where it's not cheap to go out and eat, eat out every once in a while. It can get pretty costly for people. So you have to, us as restaurateurs and hoteliers and F&B people, we have to be conscious of that. And we have to make sure that we're providing the level of service, the hospitality, the Instagrammable, cocktail, or, whatever it may be. Even having a social media backdrop where somebody can, come in and take a picture. They want that, they want an experience from the time that they pull into your parking lot to the time that they leave. Um, I think that's huge. And I think if you do that, that'll start to help create your own story. You don't have to force it. You have good branding, you have a great experience for the guest as they come in. That'll start building its own stories, so you don't have to force anything that's not genuine and authentic. I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I want to just move on swiftly. I think we've covered some great stuff there. And again, Michael talks about how some of the most visited menus in on the platforms that he's with is in breakfast and in-room dining. Breakfast.
Wow.
It's funny. I was on a call last night with one of our projects, and we were talking about breakfast. And I said, I think breakfast is one of the things we talk about the most on all of our projects. And that seems really strange when we're designing restaurants, bars, and strategies. Breakfast is always the one that we spend the most time on. In that, how do we give the best possible breakfast with the most optimum cost, and not have that bloody big breakfast buffet in the room at nighttime for everyone to stare on it, or even worse, someone to put a terrible wine display on it, which is 9 times out of 10 what people do with empty breakfast buffets. Kenny, come on, let's give some people some solutions here. What are we doing about breakfast right now, and what can we consider when we're looking at breakfast? Because it is important. As much as we say dinner is the thing that needs to drive people, breakfast is, we know it's important to guest surveys, guest satisfaction, NPS, and all this type of stuff.
I think if you have spaces within your restaurant that you can cross utilize for different things, or I don't even want to say this because it's not the best option. Putting up a hideaway wall, where it hides that breakfast, or that, the buffet area. Or if you have the space, putting the breakfast area in a completely different section than the restaurant is in. I'm on a hotel project right now where, luckily, we have two completely and different, unique spaces for our breakfast and then our restaurant. So, but I know a lot of hotels don't have, that kind of space where they can do those kind of things. If you can cross utilize your space and make it functional, breakfast for me is Scott, you and I have talked about breakfast for, man, ever since we met up in Texas and you did the breakfast study, shortly after that. Breakfast is the biggest key aspect when it comes to food and beverage for hotels. It's the stat that they look at more and more on their GSS platforms than anything else. And honestly, they could care less about their, dinner stats. Sometimes they don't even have dinner stats or lunch stats or whatever the situation may be. So you have to make sure that you have a unique space and a functional space, because breakfast is not going anywhere. Um, it's a very, very, very tough
Yeah.
subject, because it has to be cross utilized.
Yeah, for sure. JP, anything from your side of what you've seen out there as well?
Well, I agree with Kenneth. I think it should be cross-utilized, but I think also people should be a bit more modern. You always know you have a peak of breakfast at 9 a.m. So how about until 9 a.m. You can do like a plated service. Let people just order. No need to have a ugly buffet there. But everything is all chipped and damaged and not working well. It's always the same. So we'll do some a la carte breakfast, of course. Understand if you're a resort and you have 2,000 people, you cannot. But then people will look too much into the details. But if you're a smaller property, go a la carte. Let them order, and then when the peak comes, okay, you set up a small. Hey guys, you can get your croissants and everything over there. We'll just take your order for your egg special, and that's it. So I think that whole convenient and let's have croissants stay there for 4 hours, all dried up. I think that whole should change. I think it can be done in a better way, but it all depends per property and how big they are.
And
I think what's it? Sorry, Kenny, go on.
I think another thing that you can utilize is, with the advancement of technology and everything like that, utilizing rollaway, rollaway cast, heating elements and things of that nature that are, already input into tables that you can store and move out of the restaurant area. I think that can be another option if you have to utilize a buffet. I think a la carte breakfast is the best way to go. But if you, like John Paul said, if you have a large scale hotel or a resort that, that's not feasible, I think if you can utilize rollaway, heating elements and, chafers and things of that nature, I think that's another step that you could take too.
Yeah, I just to back that up, when we did the breakfast data, and this was taking data from random, we didn't ask for names, emails, anything like that, so it was totally silent. But all around the world, the most common service that was the most profitable service was cold buffet, a la carte, hot breakfast. That was the most profitable across the board. And it didn't matter whether that was in Asia Pacific, whether that was in Europe, whether that was in the States, the Middle East. All of the stats came out exactly the same. And I think what's really interesting is it's the most important service to hotels, right? And I put that in speech marks. But it's probably the one where we have the least data. And this is something that we've tried to challenge hoteliers on recently, is using things like the AI readers. Kenny, we saw Winnow when we were together at the Bar and Restaurant Expo Hospitality Show. We've been working with some of our clients on Winnow, and not looking at it from a food waste perspective. That's fine. It does the food waste, like that's done. But we're looking at how we can use it strategically by saying, how can this thing track what's coming back off the breakfast buffet? And therefore, if you've got a brand standard of 20 things, are those 20 things actually being consumed? Or is there certain items that maybe, and might say 2 types of muffins, is the same one always going and the other one isn't? And then you can be more strategic and data driven on what is selling, what isn't selling, and what's just going straight in the bin. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to take it completely off, but what you might do is you might change that for something else that then becomes much more consumed, which then helps the guest satisfaction and things like that. So I think it's, how do you build that data? How do you pull those sight lines around that breakfast offer that makes it important? The other thing that we've tried to do recently, it's funny, we put it in the strategy document that we were talking about off air today, is if you've got an open kitchen, make that your hot breakfast buffet, because you've got hot lights. It's designed so that people can go up to it. It means you don't need a big breakfast buffet. And then try and get tables in the dining room that can be cold buffets in the morning, and they become tables at the nighttime. High tables near the bar, maybe, or big communal tables. But just try and get something in there that feels part of the furniture that in the morning can just have stools or chairs moved away, and it becomes much more natural in the space, which is there as well. So, JP, Kate Fuller from Iris, fantastic software. You know her very well. I know her very well. She met Kenny as well in San Antonio. She wanted to talk about digital innovation. Now, I shared an example from a hotel in Sydney where I was at that I reckoned I could make them $500,000 just by putting QR codes in their swimming pool deck that didn't have any menus. You have real life proof of this. So do you want to share the power of going digital in all hotel spaces, but especially things like room service and beach clubs and swimming pools and things like that?
Yes, I was director of food and beverage in the Caribbean, Curacao, where we had 3 beach clubs. We had, I think, 500 beds, more or less, and all beds were like paired in 2 with an umbrella, 1 QR code. So the moment the guest goes on, it automatically saves the bed number. So like a table to get recognized. Place the order, they can pay at once, and whatever beach club ordered, it will get the food ticket comes out in the kitchen, the drinks comes out in the bar, and we wouldn't need a lot of people on the beach. We had only 4 people walking the general beach to do some clearance, to take orders if people had some challenges or they didn't have their phone with them. And the rest, we had 2 food runners and 2 beverage runners, and they were just killing it. And of course, sometimes the kitchen gets overwhelmed with orders, like lunchtime, and as soon as the first hamburger comes out, everybody wants to eat a hamburger. But it was so good for revenue, like just making sure that this system was up and running. They even invested thousands of euros in a better Wi-Fi network to make everything go faster and have no challenges over there. And it was just amazing. So other beach clubs, I've been to competitors where they don't have it. And then you have to wait for a waiter, you have to look around, there's somebody here. Oh, you're on vacation, you're chilling. You grab your phone, scan, order what you want. And then within 15 minutes, your food's at your bed, and the drinks are even in 5 minutes are delivered to you. So I think it's something that people cannot ignore. And I see there's a lot of discussion going on, but it's not up to standard. People would love to see a menu, a physical menu. I like to challenge it. It depends. It depends on the company, where you are. I don't believe that a physical menu is like of a higher standard than a QR code per se. Yeah, that's my opinion.
And I mean, people always talk about, and certainly I've seen this with people I worked in when I was in big delivery QSR brands before. Delivery obviously increased average check. Circa percentage, did it increase average check in the beach clubs that you were working, or?
Yeah, because people are always more hungry and thirsty than the thing they are. So instead of 1 beer, they just order a bucket. It's also strategic how you make that online menu. So if you order a beer, order a bucket, you get buy 6, you get 1 for free. How about some chicken nuggets or some other fried food with your drinks? So it will, people tend to order whatever they like instead of what they really need to. They order, oh, this looks nice, oh, another one. So the goes way higher than without it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing stats at like 25, 26, 27% uplift, right? It's there. Kenny, one thing that JP just talked on, which I think is a really good point, and be interesting to see what your thoughts are on this, is choice. And I think I don't think we should be taking away the physical hospitality that we've always had. If people want to ring down on the telephone and call a room service, if people want to wait for a waiter, or people want to read a physical menu, we should have that. But I think we're starting to move into an age now, especially as Gen Z are becoming more and more prominent as guests, that we have to have choice of this digital experience and making it as good as the physical one, so that people can choose how they want to interact with us, rather than us telling them how they should interact with us. What are your thoughts on this?
with the way that people are traveling today and the Gen Zs and everything like that, you want to make it as the experience as seamless and frictionless as possible.
Yeah.
I think giving people the option of if they want a physical copy of the menu, then your runner can, keep a small handful of, menus in their, in their apron as they're delivering. And if somebody flags them down and wants to see a hard copy, then they can get a hard copy.
Yeah.
But I think with the age demographic of people that are traveling more and more these days, I do see digital becoming the way. Um, and kind of talking about what JP was talking about with the QR codes and things of that nature. I did something similar at a project in Maryland, at a beach, oceanfront hotel and condo, where we did, individualized QR codes for every chair, that was around all of our
Mhm.
pool decks and everything like that. We did individual QR codes for each individual hotel room and condo for people that did want to, order room service that way. Um, make it as seamless and frictionless as possible. I think that's the best way to go about it. The way that people are, the age demographic of today's traveler is, I think, hard copy is going the way of the wayside, and I don't see us going back much more in the to hard copy of anything much more into the distant future. I see, digital being supreme.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's true. I always use the example of, if I stay at one of the Hiltons, Marriott's, something like that. If I'm traveling on my own, I'll generally use the online check-in on my phone. I'll get the key. I'll pick my room on the phone exactly like you would your aeroplane, and if no one's ever used it before, and then you get your key card and you take it to your room. You use your phone and you tap in, and it gets you into the room. If I go with my family, I'm much more likely to check in. I don't know why. It's something subconscious. I don't know whether it's the experience. I don't know whether it's because I want to make sure I have interconnecting rooms. I don't know what it is. But if I go with my family, I'm happy to check in. If I'm on my own, I just want to go to my room, throw my bag, and go out again. And it's that's what I mean about this, like, choice. Is people will want different things at different times. That same guest might not want the same thing on the next time or during a different visit or at a different time. It's like, it's just, the convenience. Some people might want to ring up and in front of the girlfriend or wife and order a bottle of champagne over the phone. If that guy on his next stay is doing a Zoom call and he wants to have a bowl of pasta because it's 8 o'clock at night, he'll want to use his phone so that it's there when he comes off the telephone call. And I think this is the bit around that choice of, I think we've got into this terrible habit in hotels of telling people how to stay at our hotels and not allowing them to curate their own stay at our hotels. And I think that's, for me, 2025 is the year of curation. I think we should allow people to engage with us how they want to. And back to your thing, Kenny, I've just put it in the chat. Make it as seamless and frictionless as possible, because we have to make it easier for people to buy. Because when you go into hotels and you sit in them, we aren't that easy to buy in. Like, hotels can be quite tough to buy something in because of all the rules and the processes and the red tape and everything else. And we've got to make it easier. I just want to, before we go, I just want to touch on one question that came through on LinkedIn, which was about navigating cost pressures. We've got to talk about it. It's prominent. We spoke about it the first. JP, like, give some tangible examples of what you're going to be doing in the bar when you open to manage some of those cost pressures. What you've been doing with some of your clients as well.
Well, it's always a discussion and a challenge. It's always, is it service versus cost? Do we need so much people because we don't have enough people in? The revenue is not up for it. So it's always a discussion. I think it should be balanced. That there's no right or wrong. You cannot predict how a day will go. So you need to keep in mind that labor cost also is there always. For the beverage cost, the food cost, it's always up to the market. What are people willing to pay? How can you work with it? So I think that this it's quite difficult to say, okay, this works, because it all depends on the property. If the GM is really F&B minded, he wouldn't mind at all to have two extra people there and to maybe make a special on the drinks because he also loves the F&B. But if he comes from the sales department or the marketing department, he would only look into cost as a burden. So I think it's something that's it's an ongoing discussion, and where I believe um, the guest experience should be the most important one. And
Yeah.
if it costs you a little bit more, okay, fine. You need to find a way to make it work at the end of the day.
Yeah, and drive revenue at the top, and it makes it's always easier to run a busy restaurant, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So then okay, if you're losing some in the beginning of the day, well, make sure that the target at the end of the day is a bit higher to compensate it. But
Yep.
I think it's always It's always a difficult situation and discussion how to manage.
For sure. Kenny, over to you. A few tangible examples.
I agree with everything that JP just said. I think the biggest thing is, like you just said, if you can increase your top line, a lot of those expense questions aren't so prevalent. They can be turned down a little bit. So, doing what you can to drive business into the restaurant. Obviously, marketing is not cheap, but a lot of times if you can do something, social media wise or something like that, where you start gaining traction and word of mouth marketing and start doing things with, professional networking groups and, or if you have university or college in your area, start doing things to whatever it may be, um, that doesn't really cost you all that much, but it's still driving people into your doors. So I think if you can start doing that, and once they're there, start providing an experience that they're never going to forget in a good way, they're going to keep coming back. So I think that's the biggest thing is, we need to start driving top end revenues, um, doing things to drive people in that are very cost effective and have a really solid return on your investment. And I think that will help when it comes to really alleviating a lot of the pressures that, you know, quote unquote, managing costs, will have.
Yeah, I think it's that thing, isn't it, about creating moments that people will want to tell others about, because then it just multiplies and becomes a lot easier. I'm going to be the boring one, right? I'm going to give you a few tangible ones that for the UK, maybe this might not work elsewhere, but it's definitely for the UK, right? Labor cost. What we're looking at right now, to those people in the UK and thinking, what are they going to do with labor cost when the increases and changes come in? We're looking at how we hire more part-time people and less full-time people, because the threshold for part-time people is much lower for when the tax kicks in and the contributions kick in. So if you have 3 part-time people, it's going to cost you less than 1 full-time people moving forward. So we're looking with operators that we're working with on how do we get that solid base of full-timers and top those up with really good part-timers that can try and keep that efficiency in, which is not easy. And I never thought we'd be in the world in hospitality where it was like hire part-timers over full-timers, but hey ho, so be it. I think again, JP, we talked about this when we met, but kind of really lean on suppliers, lean on booze suppliers especially. Start looking at which ones have got cash, which ones have got the money to be able to support you and support your guys. I was speaking to a chef patron at the Landmark Hotel, Matt Fletcher. He used to be my sous chef. He's getting free stock from his booze supplier every month that he then uses to gift to people, complimentary locals and regulars. And this is a guy who has 70% of his business is local community. He's using that free stock on promotions and to gift to people as well. And it's come through negotiating with his booze companies. So really look at that retail space that you've got on the back of the bar and challenge your F&B people. Is every single bottle behind that bar making cash when it's not being sold? That's important, because if it isn't, would you be a retail store that puts stuff on the shelves that never sells? You wouldn't. So be much more strategic about that as well, which is there. And I guess when you do that, then just having a regular thing of challenging costs. I think the other thing that we talked about when we did the workshop was who's responsible for food and beverage cost.
Yeah.
And when I asked the question to the group, everyone said the chef's responsible for food cost and the bar manager's responsible for beverage cost. And I said, I want to challenge that mindset in that the three people who should be responsible for those things is the operator, the guy who buys it, the purchasing guy, and the finance guy who ultimately is responsible. Those three people should be responsible. At the minute, we put all the onus on the chef, who doesn't dictate which suppliers we buy from because the purchasing guy's doing the tenders and choosing the supplier. And the finance guy is the one with all the mathematical knowledge to help him optimize what he's doing. So I suggest to people that they stop using food cost as the benchmark and they start using actual versus theoretical or potential cost as the benchmark, and make all of those three people responsible for getting as close to the potential cost as possible. Leave the food cost to the P&L. That's something that will take care of. But fundamentally, if your chef doesn't buy from the suppliers he wants to buy from or set the pricing that he has, he's not fully responsible for that food cost. We've got to stop making the pressures on there. So it's just kind of changing that mindset. Boring shit over. Costs done. Last question. Let's do the same thing. 2 or 3 examples of how to drive people into hotel food and beverage. And I think that's a great way to finish the show, is just 2 or 3 tangible things each. Kenny, do you want to go first with this one?
Yeah. So for hotel guests, I think it has to be a partnership with the front desk, making sure that the front desk is knowledgeable of what's going on in your hotel F&B outlets. If there's an entertainment night, if there's a cocktail special, whatever it may be, making sure that they're, providing that information to the guests that check in. I think, in common areas where guests are usually, mingling or things like that, there has to be tactful. I think that's the big thing, tactful. Advertisements to promote, what's going on in the restaurant and so forth and so on. And also, I think for the outside and bringing in general public, I think a lot of it is doing something to get your name out there and partnering with the local community, whether it be a business or a university, networking groups, a hospital, doing different theme nights, first responders night, professors and teachers night, things of that nature. You want to do things to start getting people in and, offering, specials and discounts and just as a way for those people to really feel welcome and that they want to come back, maybe not necessarily on those nights, but they want to bring somebody back with them. So
yeah, some great examples. Jean-Paul, some
because I think first of all we need to stop thinking as hoteliers and think as independent restaurants and hustle. It's a daily hustle. There's no way we can wait on marketing to approve something that needs to go above property, then come back. Then it's already Christmas and you're still discussing the Valentine's menu. You need to hustle. You need to be able to move fast, quick thinking, be on your feet, and come on, guys. Let's do our own social media. I agree. Our own website. I couldn't agree more. And partner with locals. Get local promoters in. Get the local singer in your restaurant, or a local DJ who can bring a bit more atmosphere. People will dine until 9, and then everybody looking at each other. Well, if you have a DJ starting at 9 p.m., everybody will stay seated until 11 and have a few more drinks. So I think everything discussed is the hustle. It's think as an independent property and work with the local community. I think it's the only way to go.
Yeah. My 2 or 3 on this one is, I think if anyone watching this hasn't read Gary Vee's new book, Day Trading Attention, people should put that on the agenda, because he talks all about how you should be where the attention is. And I think if we look at hotels, sometimes that, as we were talking about before, we don't have our own socials. We're not talking to people in the right channels. The hotel might not do TikTok, and therefore we just ignore TikTok, YouTube, etc. So I think look at where the attention is. On the flip side of that, I would look at where the attention isn't, because everyone at the minute is going social and going digital. And I think if you look at some of the old school marketing tactics that we used to do, post box mailing, things like that, that other people aren't doing, you're going to stand out from the crowd, because you're going to get something through the mailbox and be like, wow, we haven't had something like this through the mailbox for donkeys. I think that's where you can get attention where there's no attention, and look at some of that low-hanging fruit. And I think that there's just some really good examples of being able to do that. And I think, you touched on it, JP. I think F&B directors should have their own content people who are responsible to the F&B director. And if there's a set of clear concept guidelines, DNA, brand negotiables that they can follow, let them loose, let them own the channels, because independent restaurateurs don't care about going live. They don't care about the fact that the kitchen might not be as tidy as it looks, that the bar guy might not have put something away when he's making cocktails. They go live, they're genuine, they're authentic, they show what they do, they tell their own stories, and people connect with the personalities behind those, rather than this kind of faceless, empty restaurants. I went on one venue, I won't say where it was in Dubai, and their timeline was the same models for the last 2 years in 3 different outfits, and every single picture had no people in the background. And it was just really obvious what it was, right? So be authentic, be genuine. No one wants to see empty restaurants. Let your people do the talking. Don't worry about if they leave in 6 months. No one cares. No one cares. They want to know about the message and the story. And these are some of the things that we get too hung up on. So be authentic, be genuine, tell your stories, don't get upset, and don't treat the restaurant with the hotel's brush. I want to share one last thing before we go. Edward Bracken, I couldn't sum this whole hour up more myself, which was it's interesting that across the geographical areas you cover, it's all about experience, giving customers a reason to come and tell their friends. I'm not sure we could have put it better ourselves. Kenny, tell everyone how they can get in touch with you if they've liked some of the stuff that you've heard.
LinkedIn is the best way. LinkedIn, Kenneth Scharlatt, and the website for my company, Savage Orchid, is currently under development. So that should be happening and launching towards the end of Q1 of this year. So great things happening. But right now it's LinkedIn.
Brilliant. JP, over to you.
For me, LinkedIn always possible, or go to 5star-hospitality.com, and you can find everything that I do or what I'm involved in.
Brilliant. Well, what I'll do after the show, I'm going to go in and put the links to where to find you. I think your Instagram as well, to watch the bar coming up, JP, will be cool. And from me, hit me up on LinkedIn, odinhospitality.com, or come and watch some of our videos here on YouTube. Guys, really loved chatting food and beverage. We should definitely do it again in a few months. Kenny, I'll see you in Vegas at the end of March at the Bar and Restaurant Expo. We can hang out. And
I didn't know you were coming out.
There you go. There you go. As I said to Jason yesterday, what comes to Vegas stays in Vegas. So maybe we have to take the Insta stories off, right? Just for that period. But yeah, we'll see you in Vegas. Guys, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott.